ربنا ظلمنا انفسنا وان لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين. اللهم نسالك رضاك والجنه ونعوذ بك من سخطك والنار. اللهم انك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا. واخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين. So we're continuing the journey through the seerah of Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam from the Holy Quran, from Surah Yusuf. Before I get started, I just want to make an observation, something that I see in many messages. So I'm just going to play out a test for a second. This has nothing to do with Surah Yusuf. So I come in late to the prayer. Yes, the prayer is active already. The Imam is active. And I come into a line, and people are standing over here, and I go and I stand over there. Is that okay? No. Where am I supposed to stand? Behind the Imam. Behind the Imam. When lines are formed for prayer, this is important, and many masajid people make this mistake. The reference point for the line is behind the Imam. So I can't see a brother standing in the middle, and I go and stand on the side, and then other people come on the side, and so now there's 3 people here, 4 people in the middle, 2 people on that side, with big gaps in between. See what I'm saying? The other point to remember is, with respect to the feet and standing, you see some brothers, they want to get everybody in line, mashallah, but they're on the right-hand side. They're like, they're trying to move the whole line. Again, the reference point is who? The person behind the Imam. So the line should align to the person most behind the Imam in the line, right? So when you come into the masjid and someone is standing, don't form a line to the left, a line to the right, and it ends up being broken. Follow the people in the middle, right? Okay, alhamdulillah. So still on Surah Yusuf, I think we closed off last time where Yusuf alayhi salam tells his brothers who he is. He finally uncovers his identity, and he basically tells them who he is, and they've come to him, and they're in desperate need of supplies and in desperate need of food for their families. And a conversation occurs between them that we can see in the palace. Ayah number 91. They finally admit, they say, well, first, before that, they say, قَالُوا أَإِنَّكَ لَأَنْتَ يُوسُف. And remember what I said in this term, like when they say قَالُوا أَإِنَّكَ لَأَنْتَ يُوسُف, is actually a triple confirmation of a question mark and exclamation points at the end. Like someone is saying, is that really, really you? Is that absolutely, absolutely you? Like they can't believe it from their own minds, the younger brother that they left or lost such a long time ago, that they finally catch up with him, and he says to them, قال أنا يوسف وهذا أخي. I am Yusuf, and his brother comes out, Binyamin. Now remember, how many brothers are missing at this stage from the family of Yaqub? 3 brothers are missing. 3 brothers are missing. You'll understand from the conversation that occurs over the next few ayat, while Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't say it explicitly. So we know that Binyamin was with Yusuf, and we know where Yusuf was. We know where the brothers were, so who's the only person missing? The oldest brother. We understand from the conversation that eventually he's found as well, and he's made part of the crew. The older brother is not lost forever. And what confirms this, that they find the older brother? In the following page, is when he finally gathers his family in Egypt, what do? They all make sujood to him. And we'll talk about what that means in a second. So they were all there when they finally make sujood, which is the vision or the dream that Yusuf has in the beginning of the surah, the very beginning of the surah, right? Okay. So he says, فَإِنَّهُ لَا يُضِيعُ أَجْرَ الْمُحْسِنِينَ فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُضِيعُ أَجْرَ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. And this is important for us to know that people of ihsan, what is ihsan in Islam? Well, how do we learn what ihsan is? Ihsan is when you worship Allah with extreme sincerity. Ihsan is the highest level of actually doing good, right? So ihsan is worshipping Allah with extreme sincerity. That's why in the hadith of Jibreel, when he comes to the Prophet in a long hadith, he asks him, what is ihsan? He says, ihsan is you worship Allah as if you see him, and if you do not see him. And he said, what does that mean? It means all the actions that we do as Muslims are with extreme sincerity. So we know, and this is a confirmation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala telling us in the Holy Quran, whatever work we do of ihsan is never lost. Nothing is lost. So no one can say, oh, this thing was so small. In the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, he says, never belittle any good deed. Even if it's what? Half a date. You give in sadaqah. Look how small half a date is, right? So this is the notion of ihsan. So they finally admit, قالوا تالله لقد آثرك الله علينا وإن كنا لخاطئين. So finally now they admit their faults. Admitting the fault, we said, is the first part of making tawbah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? So they finally admit their mistake and they say, we have been wrong and then we've been sinful. And he says, قال لا تثريب عليكم اليوم يغفر الله لكم وهو أرحم الراحمين. The words he uses, لا تثريب عليكم اليوم, he actually says to them, there is no blame on you today. He doesn't accuse them of anything. He doesn't say you did this and this and this. He didn't say, you're guilty because he says there's no blame. He's actually not speaking in the first person. He's not even saying I forgive you. He's not even saying I forgive you. He's saying there's no blame on you today. يغفر الله لكم, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive you. وهو خير الراحمين. So this should be our attitude. The lesson that we learn here is not just a massive lesson in forgiveness. And I think last time I spoke about the Prophet ﷺ, Fath Makkah, how he forgave the Quraysh. He uses the same ayah. It's a lesson in us being forgiving, even with Muslim, especially with Muslim sinners. We sometimes say, oh man, this brother, you don't believe what he did, or this sister, you don't know what she did. We sometimes have this attitude as a community. And we should not have this as a community. The only way we're going to rescue people is to be able to open our hearts to them even when they make mistakes. And if we can do this with a non-Muslim, we should especially be able to do it with a Muslim. We should especially be able to do this with the Muslims, right? So this is what happens. And then this question arises, I may have asked this last time, which is, how do we understand that Yusuf, how can Yusuf say Allah will forgive you? How can he say that Allah will forgive you? How does he say this? We understand that he says this from two perspectives. One perspective is he himself has forgiven the brothers. So we know as human beings, when we wrong each other, when we make haram with Allah, Allah forgives us. Yes, we believe this in Islam. This is a fundamental belief in Islam, that when we make a wrong between us and Allah directly, whatever kind of mistake or sin it is, however big or small it is, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgives us directly. We make istighfar, Allah forgives us. We make tawbah, Allah forgives us. But when it's intrahuman, the human has to forgive. The human has to forgive. So one explanation is Yusuf alayhi salam actually forgives the brothers. And the second is simply that the second is that he's making dua for them that Allah may forgive them. Now remember, this is coming to the Prophet ﷺ in a very tough year, when he was rejected by Ta'if, when his wife Khadija radiallahu anha, died, when his uncle Abu Talib dies. It's a year that's extremely tough for the Prophet ﷺ on a personal level. The rejection in Ta'if was unbelievably offensive to him, right? The Khadija radiallahu anha, from day one was his number one supporter. His uncle had the political power to block the Quraysh from him, and all of this is gone right after each other. Months within each other, he loses this, right? So this is as if to tell the Prophet ﷺ to be forgiving even with the people of Mecca, and this is what happens. And number 93, اذهبوا بقميصي هذا فألقوه على وجه أبي يأتي بصيرا وأتوني بأهلكم أجمعين. So he says, take my shirt and throw it on the face of my father. His sight will come back, and come back with your whole family. How many times did the shirt play a role in the surah?
3 times.
2? 3? Final answer? Yeah, so 3 times, right? The first time the shirt plays a role is the shirt that comes back with the fake blood telling him that the wolf ate him. The second time the shirt plays a role is when it gets cut from behind. And conveniently, the minister is not told that it was cut from behind. It's actually the relative of the woman that says this. He becomes a judge, he becomes a jury. He says, hey, you need to provide evidence before you put this man into prison or put him to blame. And the evidence is the following. The evidence is going to be the shirt. If what she says is truth, and so they go through. This is on the third time. I read a really nice tafsir that said every time that this shirt comes up, there's a different point of view that we're supposed to learn from. The first one is someone that is blamed illegally for something they did not commit. But the truth comes out when? Years down the line, right? So even sometimes it may happen to us that we feel I've been wrong, like it's a really, really big thing, and this happened such a long time ago. When am I ever going to get my, when am I ever going to get my reward? When am I ever going to get justice? Right? It may happen years down the line. Now there's another problem with that, is it may never happen at all in dunya. You understand? It may never happen at all in dunya. There's a book I read, and I have to tell you the story, even though it's on a tangent, that was written by a French judge. And he was a French judge that was in the, what you can consider the French Supreme Court. Like, how the US has a Supreme Court, they have a Supreme Court. This judge, France, first of all, forget France today, but France in general is very anti, like it has this huge, firewall between religion and law. Like, and religion doesn't mix into law and vice versa. And it considers itself a state of no religion, okay? And this man believed very strongly in the French justice system. He grew up through the ranks of being an attorney and then a judge and then being voted to this, position of extreme honor for them. And then after he retired, he did this research into all the people, many of the cases that he had in France that were actually condemned for death for murder, and found out that many of them were innocent. So years later, right, they were accused falsely, but they were still either thrown in prison for life or they were killed, or whatever happened, but they were persecuted. And he started to have this traumatic attack that this law is not perfect. The law of the land is not perfect. And he was a Christian. He wasn't a general believer in Christianity, but he started to do research on where it is, because he believed foundation in justice, which system has the best system for justice, and he only found it to be Islam. This man actually takes the Shahada at a very old age, because of the concept of akhirah, because of the concept that this dunya is not where everything might happen. Things may get resolved down the line in akhirah. Right? So we learn from these multiple episodes of the shirt, and now the shirt comes back to Yaqub alayhi salam as a what? As a healer. And it's kind of ironic. What's ironic about this is that they took the shirt in the beginning to show that he was killed. Now he's saying, hey, take my shirt. It's going to give the father back the eyesight. Like remember the shirt? No, it's not. Is it the same shirt? It's not the same shirt, right? It's not the same shirt, clearly, right? But he gives them the shirt this time as a healer. يأتي بصيرا وأتوني بأهلكم أجمعين. The Mufassirin say وأتوني بأهلكم أجمعين. He come back with what? What is أتوني بأهلكم أجمعين? With all your families. He now has the capability to bring the families into Egypt. He now has the capability to give them a green card, so to speak, right? And many of the Mufassirin say there were 70 of them. Some Mufassirin say there were more. Now this is the first migration of the Bani Israel to Egypt. The first migration of Bani Israel to Egypt, coming from the brothers of Yusuf, because they actually formed the tribes of the Bani Israel after the fact, right? And when do they leave Egypt after that? Who knows?
During the time of Pharaoh.
500 years later. Right? So 500 years later, they come to Egypt. They now have a big population from the original brothers of Yusuf alayhi salam. They live for that long, and then after Musa alayhi salam comes at the time of Pharaoh and the persecution of Pharaoh is when Musa leads them out of Egypt, right? So this is, yes?
So some scholars have said the shirt of Yusuf alayhi salam was passed to generations. It went to Musa, it went to Dawud alayhi salam, Suleiman, and it was in the Tabut of Suleiman.
It was in the?
It was in the chest of Suleiman alayhi salam.
What was in the chest of Suleiman?
The shirt of Yusuf.
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, I know. There's a lot of I don't know. I don't know that to be fact. Yeah, but what is definitely described in the books of the Bidayah and Nihayah is like 500 years, roughly 500 years between the time of Yusuf alayhi salam until the time of Pharaoh, right? The coming of Musa. Okay. Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, ayah number 94. وَلَمَّا فَصَلَتِ الْعِيرُ قَالَ أَبُوهُمْ إِنِّي لَأَجِدُ رِيحَ يُوسُفَ لَوْلَا أَن تُفَنِّدُونِ. When the caravan departed from Egypt, as soon as the caravan departs the outskirts of the city, Yaqub alayhi salam, who is living in the land of Palestine, can start to smell the sensation of the shirt of Yusuf alayhi salam, right? And subhanallah, I don't know if I said this before last time or not, but in Islam, this, in the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, invocation of smell is a very powerful thing. For example, what does the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam say about hadith of smell? He says, for example, the arrogant person will not come close to Jannah and enter into Jannah, and Jannah can be smelled from so many years away. Now, why is the smell is used? Why doesn't the Prophet ﷺ says you can see Jannah from 2 years walking? Why does he say from the power of smell? Because our power of smell as human beings is inherently not strong. You can stand on the highway on a nice sunny day like today and see Mount Rainier. You can't smell Mount Rainier. You understand? You can't smell it. You have to get closer as a human being to be able to smell Mount Rainier. But the Prophet ﷺ is saying that the smell of Jannah, because it's so beautiful, is so strong. You can smell it from so far away. So it says the arrogant person will never enter into Jannah or even come close to it to get its smell. Meaning the smell of Jannah in of itself is a ni'mah. And even though the smell can be smelled from so far away. So here the story is flipped where the passion, the love for the father has an intonation of the memory of Yusuf. So Yaqub alayhi salam immediately says, he says, "Inni la'ajidu riha Yusuf." I can certainly sense the smell of Yusuf. Lawla an tufannidun, but you call me senile. You call me you crazy old man. That's exactly what they say next, right? What do they say? They say, "Qalu tallahi innaka lafi dhalalika qadim." The grandchildren. This is now the grandchildren. The boys are not with him. But when you're living with an older parent, and this is something also that we learn from the surah: respect for the parents, respect for the grandparents, for the older parents. And all you hear is your parents, your mother and your father say, "Man, he's an old man. He keeps making stuff up. He keeps babbling. He keeps saying this." As a children, you grow up listening to that. So you start to say the same things that your parents used to say, right? And they basically say, "Man, you're a senile old man," right? What did they say about him before? You're going to keep reminding yourself of Yusuf until you get sick, until you kill yourself. Right? This was the previous episode that they had with Yaqub. Okay. فَلَمَّا جَاءَ الْبَشِيرُ. So finally, Bashir in Arabic comes from the word Bushra, which means the bearer of good news. So finally, the caravan arrives. فَلَمَّا جَاءَ الْبَشِيرُ. The Bashir comes, the person of good news. Many people say this was the second oldest brother. Allahu A'lam. He comes with the shirt of Yusuf alayhi salam. ألقاه على وجه أبيه فارتد بصيرا. ألقاه على وجهه فارتد بصيرا. So he throws him on the face of the father, and the father can see again. Now remember, we never said he went completely blind. There's a difference of opinion from the Mufassirin about that. Most opinions are his eyesight was weak, but when he gets the shirt, he can see again quite well, even though he's very old. قال ألم أقل لكم إني أعلم من الله ما لا تعلمون. And he basically says to them, did I not tell you that I know from Allah what you do not know? So now the brothers respond. Ayah number 97. قالوا يا أبانا استغفر لنا ربنا إنا كنا خاطئين. So they admit to the guilt to their father, and they say, "Oh, our father, ask for istighfar for us with Allah. إنا كنا خاطئين. We are admitting to our mistake. قال سوف أستغفر الله لكم وهو الغفور الرحيم. إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. قال سوف أستغفر لكم ربي إنه هو الغفور الرحيم." What is the difference between Sawfa and Sa in Arabic?
Future, like distant future and close future.
Sorry?
Distant future and close future.
Okay, so which one is this? Which one is distant? Which one is close?
Sawfa is distant.
Sawfa is distant. So he doesn't say, "I'm immediately going to make istighfar." He says, "Sawfa." So Yaqub alayhi salam says, "Okay, I'm going to make istighfar for you, but not right now." So Mufassirin have different opinions about why he says Sawfa. Because as a father, you want to make istighfar for your kids right away. You don't want to wait. But he says, "Sawfa astaghfiru lakum rabbi." So one of the things that Mufassirin say is the emotional state of Yaqub, of knowing something was fishy, you guys were all, and it turns out to be true. So that's one. But the other very prevalent explanation of it is he wanted to make istighfar for them when? During the night time, during the night prayer, or after Fajr, right? Or after Fajr prayer, right? The times when we know the dua is accepted, right? Hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, what does he say? He says that in the third night, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks the people of the earth, what would you want? Who wants to ask me for something and I will give it to him? Who needs help? Who needs money? Who needs this? And I will give it to him. And you can say that the phone lines are less busy. The phone lines are completely open, right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hears, of course, all the time. But one of the best times to make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in the third, last third of the night, right? This is what Yaqub alayhi salam is doing. So now the family comes to Egypt. فَلَمَّا دَخَلُوا عَلَى يُوسُفَ آوَى إِلَيْهِ أَبَوَيْهِ وَقَالَ ادْخُلُوا مِصْرَ إِنْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ آمِنِينَ. So finally, when they, but by the way, before I finish, how should we think of the brothers when they ask for istighfar from their father? Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Good thing. It's a good thing. Islam is about really, really important in our deen to understand, Islam is about how people end, not how people start. Islam is about how people end, right? So that's why the Prophet ﷺ teaches us to make dua for husn khatimah, right? A good ending. We should all hope for good ending. There's someone that was asked, one of the famous scholars. He said he was asked by a student. He said, would you rather die as a Muslim? There were like a two-story masjid. Would you rather die as a Muslim where you are, or would you rather die as a shaheed going up the steps? What was the response of the scholar?
Or die as a Muslim.
Die as a Muslim where I am. And what was his reasoning for that? He said, because I can't guarantee I'm still going to be Muslim if I go up the steps. Because of all the fitan around us. That's why, subhanAllah, husn khatimah is so important for us, for our children, right? Like, don't ever think you're a B student, you're going to be a B student forever. People change for various reasons, right? So the fact that they make this istighfar is a good thing. So the actions are by the endings of them, right? Instead, the actions are by the endings of them, right? And by the way, the other thing that happened is the other opinion is that the brothers become, what do they become later? Fill in the blank.
Founders of each tribe.
They become minor prophets. They actually become, so they're not like a major prophet like Yusuf or Musa, but they become minor prophets, right? This is the other opinion. So the brothers actually get even a higher elevated status, even after everything that they've done, right? فلما دخلوا على يوسف آوى إليه أبويه وقال ادخلوا مصر إن شاء الله آمنين. Anyone here from Egypt? Anyone here from Senegal? Okay, Senegalese, congratulations. They won the African World Cup, if you're not following. But what I was going to say was and they beat Egypt, so hence the question. The old Egyptian airport, I don't know if anyone here is old enough to remember this, they had the sign, Tulu Misra Insha'Allah Amini. So as you entered into the airport, they had this ayah of the Quran, enter Egypt safely, But anyway, so when they come to Yusuf, so the Mufassirin say he made a really big, fancy procession to welcome the father and the mother and the brothers. He's now a minister. He's now in control and power, everything. So he sets up an honor guard and he sends out the people and he's like, you know what I mean? Like the fancy procession. And he says, enter into Egypt safely. Now, who is his father's wife at the time?
Not his exact mother.
Not his mother. Who? His aunt. So his maternal aunt. His maternal aunt. Correct. So the maternal aunt in Islam very much plays the role of the mother. More so than the paternal aunt. You understand? The maternal aunt from Muslim, both of course are considered family, both are very important. But the maternal aunt plays a much closer role to the person than the paternal aunt, right? So this is now his maternal aunt that's coming as the wife of the father, right? And she was the sister of Yusuf alayhi salam's mother, right? She was the immediate sister of Yusuf alayhi salam's mother, right? Okay. وَرَفَعَ أَبَوَيْهِ عَلَى الْعَرْشِ وَخَرُّوا لَهُ سُجَّدًا. So he elevates his parents on the throne, Arsh's throne. And the Mufassirin say, we don't know if this was Yusuf's throne, some other throne, just the height. We don't know, but he elevates them on some sort of honorable seating. This is Abu'ay, his father and his mother, or his father and his aunt. وَخَرُّوا لَهُ سُجَّدًا. Now, sujood. How do they make sujood to Yusuf? وَخَرُّوا لَهُ سُجَّدًا. How do they make sujood? Someone show me.
Their heads.
Bowing their heads. Yeah, but this is not a sujood in the way we make it, right? By the majority of opinion. This is sujood like like a martial arts sujood. If you do karate or taekwondo, like one of those. Okay, this is so sujood can actually mean sujood in sujood the way we do that, or sujood in the case of ruku'. So many of the mufassirin say this was not sujood on the face, this was sujood on ruku'. Other mufassirin say sujood to people at the time of Yaqub alayhi salam was actually permissible. Allahu a'lam, that's probably not the majority opinion. Because at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, Mu'adh ibn Jabal, when he did a trip, this was in Medina, he does a trip to to Syria, and he comes back to the masjid in Medina, and when he sees the Prophet ﷺ, what does he do? He makes sujood to the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet said, what are you doing? And he says, I just came back from, from Bilad al-Sham, like from Syria, and I see them making sujood to their patriarchs and their priests all day long. So you're more important than he says, don't do it again. Get up. We don't do this in Islam, right? So we don't do this in Islam. We only make sujood to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? So this is a sujood in the case of ruku'. So now this becomes the fulfillment of the original dream that started way back when at the beginning of the surah. This is effectively the dream of Yusuf alayhi salam, 100% coming truth, right? وَخَرُّوا لَهُ سُجَّدًا قَالَ يَا أَبَتِ وَقَالَ يَا أَبَتِ هَذَا تَأْوِيلُ رُؤْيَايَ مِنْ قَبْلُ. So he says to his father, oh my father, this is exactly the vision that I had before. قَدْ جَعَلَهَا رَبِّي حَقًّا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it true. قَدْ جَعَلَهَا رَبِّي حَقًّا وَقَدْ أَحْسَنَ بِي إِذْ أَخْرَجَنِي مِنَ السِّجْنِ. And he says that he was kind to me, that he gave me the opportunity to leave the prison, right? وقد أحسن بي إذا أخرجني من السجن وجاء بكم من البدو من بعد أن نزغ الشيطان بيني وبين إخوتي. And he was kind to me after the shaitan. Look at the beautiful language he uses. Creates an enmity between me and my brothers. He didn't say my brothers were evil. He didn't say my brothers were jealous. He said shaitan came between us. That's all it was. Shaitan just came between us and created this big disagreement. That's why what happened, right? وجاء بكم من البدو من بعد أن نزغ الشيطان بيني وبين إخوتي إن ربي لطيف لما يشاء. I want you to start to pay attention to the attributes of Allah being played out in the next few ayats, right? ربي لطيف لما يشاء. Latif. What does Latif in Arabic mean?
Extremely.
Latif means kind, extremely kind. لطيف لما يشاء. So Allah is extremely kind to what He wants. Latif. Let me tell you exactly what Latif means.
Very subtle, very light on somebody.
Very light, very gentle. Yes, we're fragile creations, by the way. Humans are very fragile creations, right? Latif it's as if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala He understands what it's like to be in our position. He understands what it's like He created us. If you work for Boeing, or if you create an aircraft engine, and you're the engineer behind the aircraft engine, you know how long this thing is going to work. You know how it's going to stress. You know when it's going to fracture. You know when it's going to heat up. You're like, wait a minute, back off, right? This is the concept of Latif. Latif is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is so kind to us. He knows what it's like. He's not. So this notion, and this is important, because this is very different to the Christian notion that some of the Christians say this. They say, God loved human beings and He had to come and walk on the earth. But we don't say any of this. This is part of their Trinity. But this is important for us to understand and teach our children. This is an attribute of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He knows how everything is. He doesn't need to do anything different. So Latif is extremely kind, extremely gentle. إِنَّهُ هُوَ الْعَلِيمُ الْحَكِيمُ. And by the way, لِمَا يَشَاء means everything that happened is from the Mashiach of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And even though in the way that it acted it out, I was put in the well, I was thrown into prison, you had a hard time with the food, etc. This is all still lutf from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even the way this played out, but a lot of mercy and gentleness. إِنَّهُ هُوَ الْعَلِيمُ الْخَبِيرُ. He is certainly the most, he is the one that knows everything, Al-Alim Hakim, and He is the all-wise, right? And so this is what this actual says. And by the way, when he says قَدْ جَعَلَهُ رَبِّي حَقًّا, the best thing to say is this notion of actualization of the dream. The dream itself is actualized. Ayah number 101, رَبِّ قَدْ آتَيْتَنِي مِنَ الْمُلْكِ وَعَلَّمْتَنِي مِنْ تَأْوِيلِ الْأَحَادِيثِ. Memorize this ayah. If you don't memorize this surah, memorize this dua. This is a dua from Yusuf alayhi salam. رَبِّ قَدْ آتَيْتَنِي مِنَ الْمُلْكِ وَعَلَّمْتَنِي مِنْ تَأْوِيلِ الْأَحَادِيثِ فاطر السماوات والأرض أنت ولي في الدنيا والآخرة توفني مسلما والحقني بالصالحين. So he says, my Lord, you have surely granted me. So Yusuf alayhi salam now turns back to Allah. By the way, this ayah is the last ayah of the surah. There's still one page and one ayah left of the conclusion that we'll get into. But this is basically the last ayah of the story of Yusuf in this surah. Last ayah. So this seals the movie, right? This is the last episode of the movie, so to speak. And Yusuf alayhi salam is making a dua. He says, قَدْ أَتَيْتَنِي مِنَ الْمُلْكِ. Ya Allah, you have given me some of the wealth, some of the mulk. Who does mulk belong to? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All of mulk belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Holy Quran, He says, قُلْ اللَّهُمَّ مَالِكَ الْمُلْكِ تُؤْتِي الْمُلْكَ مَنْ تَشَاءُ. Mulk, you could say in Arabic, I own a property. I own a house, or I own a car, or I own these glasses, right? Now, the Lord of all of mulk put together is only Allah. He is Allah, right? He is Malik al-Mulk. So Yusuf is saying, Ya Allah, you've given me a little bit of possession. Even though he has the highest authority in the country. You understand? Like literally, he has the highest authority in the country at this stage. And he said, Allah, you've given me a little bit of possession, right? قَدْ أَتَيْتَنِي مِنَ الْمُلْكِ وَعَلَّمْتَنِي مِنْ تَأْوِيلِ الْأَحَادِيثِ. What is عَلَّمْتَني مِنْ تَأْوِيلِ الْأَحَادِيثِ? What is the superpower that he had? The capability to interpret dreams.
Interpretation of dreams.
Interpretation of dreams. And this was his superpower for da'wah. Right? Every messenger came with a miracle, came with a superpower. His superpower was the capability to interpret dreams. He had others. Messengers may have had others. For example, Musa alayhi salam, what was his superpower?
Staff.
His staff. But what other superpowers did he have? Sorry?
He spoke to Allah.
He spoke to Allah, yes, but what other superpowers could he demonstrate humans? His hand. What did he do with his hand? He'd go like this. He'd take his hand, he'd go like this, and when he pulls it out, it was shining white. That's what this means. Take your hand, your janah is your wing, right? So Musa, and when he pulls it out, it's shining bright white, right? Shining. Now, what was also different about that with Musa? Why was this a special superpower?
He had strength.
He has strength, but strength isn't something he demonstrated. But what's special about the hand? Going back to the hand real quick. Just talking about miracles of prophets. It was what? The wing? No, his hand was shining white. Everybody could see bright light coming out of his hand. But what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say about that? Why is that special? There's two things about that that's special. One is, it's not from a disease. تخرج بيضاء من غير سوء آية أخرى means it comes out white with no disease. What disease is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala referring to? Leprosy, which was very prevalent at the time. Right, even at the time of Isa alayhi salam. So the leprosy is a type of skin disease where the skin effectively starts to deteriorate, and people were so afraid of it that they pushed away these people and have these diseases. Something like COVID's problem that we have now, right? They're like, but this destroyed the skin and it turned to white, right? But this Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying this white is a clean white, it's a strong white, right? But the other thing about this was what? What was the color of Musa alayhi salam? Black. He wasn't just black, he was very black. He was, I mean this in the most respectful way. He was very black. And how do we know that? How do you know that about Musa alayhi salam? Because the Prophet ﷺ sees him in the Isra and Mi'raj, and he comes back and he describes Musa alayhi salam to us. And he said he is dark like the people of Shad al-Ad. This was an Arab tribe that was, they were like, when you see an African American brother, that's what Musa alayhi salam looked like. He was an African American brother. And by the way, he was built up. The brother that's saying he was strong, who said he was strong? Which is exactly, he was built up. Like you think now of Musa alayhi salam, like that's what he looked like. He was an African American brother that was strong and big and built, like bis and tris and six pack and everything. That's what Musa alayhi salam was, right? And how do we know that, by the way? The whole six pack, bis and tris and things. How do we know that?
He kills with one punch.
Okay, he carried the stone. Yep. Okay, people saw him, yeah.
With one punch he
hit one person and he slapped one person, he killed him. Yeah, what else? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says so. What does he say? And then now this is a Quranic test. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say about the description of Musa alayhi salam after he grows up in Surah Al-Qasas? وَلَمَّا بَلَغَ أَشُدَّهُ وَاسْتَوَى استواء, when he grows up, wastawa means he's like this. Istawa means solid like a tree. How do we know that he's solid like a tree? This Surah Yusuf, what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say about Yusuf alayhi salam? Before the incident with the woman and the wife of the minister. وَلَمَّا بَلَغَ أَشُدَّهُ آتَيْنَاهُ حُكْمًا وَعِلْمًا كَذَلِكَ نَجْزِي الْمُحْسِنِينَ. He doesn't say wastawa. Yusuf alayhi salam was wonderful looking, he was very handsome, but he wasn't like that. He wasn't one of those guys. Musa alayhi salam was one of those guys. Right? Okay, so this is part of the beautiful Quranic speech, right? Like that every word of the Quran means something, right? Okay. So he says, فاطر السماوات والأرض. So he says about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he is فاطر السماوات والأرض. What is فاطر السماوات والأرض? فاطر السماوات والأرض. فاطر is خالق يعني creator. Okay. How is Fatir different to creator? So you can call someone Abd al-Khaliq. Right? Abd al-Khaliq. Fatir. How is Fatir different?
Fatir is creating out of something. And Khaliq is creating out of nothing.
Inshallah, that's a perfect answer. Khaliq means you can create out of something or not. Fatir means you can create out of nothing. Out of nothing. So Yusuf is saying, you Allah, you can create everything out of nothing. You don't need a chemical reaction with a big bang for things to show up the way they are. Right? This is Fatir as-Samawati wal-Ard. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the heavens and the earth. And he uses the description of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Fatir as-Samawati wal-Ard. أنت ولي في الدنيا والآخرة. You are my wali. What does wali mean?
Friend.
It has two predominant things. Yeah, friend is one, and the other one is guardian. Excellent. Friend and guardian, friend and protector. Right? He's saying, Ya Allah, you protect me. You protect me. And He protects all of us, obviously. In dunya and in akhirah. He protects us in dunya through just taking care of us. We don't have an accident when we drive. Our kids, alhamdulillah, are safe. He protects us in that, we don't get struck by lightning. He protects us in our deen. He protects us not praying, not committing dhunub. In dunya and in akhirah. Protecting us from the tests of akhirah, right? أنت ولي في الدنيا والآخرة. توفني مسلما وألحقني بالصالحين. Look at the humility of Yusuf alayhi salam in his dua. He says, توفني مسلما. All I want, Ya Allah, is that you take me as a Muslim, die in a state of Islam. وألحقني بالصالحين, and give the companionship of me to be with those of as-salihin. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Holy Quran, وَمَنْ يُطِعِ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ فَأُولَٰئِكَ مَعَ الَّذِينَ أَنْعَمَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِمْ مِنَ النَّبِيِّينَ وَالصِّدِّيقِينَ وَالشُّهَدَاءِ وَالصَّالِحِينَ وَحَسُنَ أُولَٰئِكَ رَفِيقًا. And whoever obeys Allah and His Messenger, they are elevated on the Day of Judgment. And the elevation is فَأُولَٰئِكَ مَعَ الَّذِينَ أَنْعَمَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِمْ, those who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given them His grace, مِنَ النَّبِيِّينَ. So level number one, super first class Jannah, is Nabiyeen. Who are Nabiyeen? The prophets. As-Siddiqeen, those that confirm the truth in the prophets. As-Shuhada, Was-Salihin, right? As-Salihin is the righteous, right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says basically, وَحَسُنَ أُولَٰئِكَ رَفِيقًا, and everyone else after that does good deeds, right? So Yusuf alayhi salam is saying, I don't even really care if I'm with the Nabiyeen. I'd like to be with, but I'm good if I'm with the Salihin. You understand? This is the humility of Yusuf alayhi salam, and calling out to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Incidentally, what's the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ here where he teaches about friendship? Friendship, what does he say? Al-mar'u ala dini khalilihi falyanzur ahadukum man yukhalil. Every one of you, speaking about the social friendship, wali, right? Well, because wali, by the way, could also be a friend. He is my wali, he's my friend, right? This person is my friend. Take care who your friends are, because you follow the system of your closest friends, especially true for the youth. Right? You hang out with flunkies, you become a flunky. You hang out with people that use bad words, you're going to use bad words. You hang out with good people that give good drinks, and so on and so forth, right? Okay, so the rest of the surah, there's 5-6 ayat left, are all a conclusion to everything that happened before. So now that we're finished with the story of Yusuf alayhi salam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to us and to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, now let me tell you the things you should learn from the story of Yusuf. Let me just summarize them for you, right? Lessons learned from the surah, right? And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, ذَلِكَ مِنْ أَنْبَاءِ الْغَيْبِ نُوحِيهِ إِلَيْكَ وَمَا كُنْتَ لَدَيْهِمْ إِذْ أَجْمَعُوا أَمْرَهُمْ وَهُمْ يَمْكُرُونَ. So he says, this is for you, O Prophet, stories from the unseen. And you didn't see them when they plotted against Yusuf. Now, why is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saying this to the Prophet? مِنْ أَنْبَاءِ الْغَيْبِ نُوحِيهِ إِلَيْكَ. Why is this from أَنْبَاءِ الْغَيْبِ to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam didn't know this story. That's number one. But what's more relevant? Quraysh didn't know. Quraysh didn't know. This story was prevalent with the Christian community, with the Jewish community, right? But the Quraysh themselves, they didn't know this story. They didn't know the story of Yusuf alayhi salam. So this is brand new. This is fresh information, right? Fresh information. Okay. And the other thing that it does is, what does it establish for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? His credibility. He could not have made this up himself. He could not have made this up, right? He didn't come and just invent the story, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that told him to say the story. So this is the first one. وَمَا أَكْثَرُ النَّاسِ وَلَوْ حَرَصْتَ بِالْمُؤْمِنِينَ. Ayah number 103. And most people will not believe no matter how keen you are. The Prophet ﷺ always wanted sincere guidance for humanity. Always wanted sincere guidance, right, for humanity. And no matter how sincere he may be, people will reject. And this is just the truth of da'wah. Most people reject, some people accept, right? This is also a lesson for us, right? وَمَا أَكْثَرُ النَّاسِ وَلَوْ حَرَصْتَ بِالْمُؤْمِنِينَ وَمَا تَسْأَلُهُمْ عَلَيْهِ مِنْ أَجْرٍ إِنْ هُوَ إِلَّا ذِكْرٌ لِلْعَالَمِينَ. Even though you're not asking them for a reward from this Quran, it is not except a reminder for the whole world, right? So the Prophet ﷺ, could he have been rich at some point in time in Medina? Could our Prophet have been rich? How? How could he have been rich? Tell me what your knowledge of the Seerah test. When could the Prophet ﷺ have been super rich in his life?
Khaybar.
What's right? Khaybar. Okay, yeah. So why?
Because they were like.
Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said he could have what? A fifth. He could have a fifth of the winnings of the battle. You understand how much they got in Khaybar? Even before Khaybar, right? Even before Khaybar. The Prophet ﷺ could have made money. That's what he wanted to do. At the time that he lived with Khadija radiallahu anha, in the beginning of the story, she was a very rich merchant. You don't know stories of Prophet bought a Ferrari and bought this, he didn't do that. He lived a very modest life, right? And even after so, when he had the capability, what did he do? He'd give it away. There's even a story, the Prophet ﷺ had his clothes were very old, right? Very old. This is in Medina, it's a Medini story, and had some holes in them. So he goes so the companions say, listen, let's buy him a nice clothes. Like when you say, hey, let's buy him a nice clothes. So they buy him a nice clothes, like a nice new, and they go and they give it to the Prophet ﷺ. And the Prophet ﷺ wears it to the masjid. And then he goes to the masjid, and Sahabi goes there and he says, Ya Rasulullah, can I have that? The Prophet ﷺ says, yes, come with me. So he goes home, and he gives it to him, and he puts on his old clothes. He goes back to the masjid. So the companions are like, boy, you wait until you come back. They get this guy, they pull him aside. Right? And then, what'd you do? We just got him this clothes. Like, you made him go back and wear his old clothes again, right? And the man basically says, listen, I only did this for one reason. What was his reason? Does anyone know?
To use it as a fraud.
That's it. He wants to be buried in something that touched the body of the Prophet. Right? Did a similar story happen like this before? With the Prophet ﷺ? Where?
When Arab Quraysh go to him and they ask him if they can give him money and to give up da'wah.
Yeah, that's right. When in Mecca they said, hey, we'll make you a king. We'll have you build we'll make you the richest person. We'll do this. And what does he say? He says, no. In fact, the uncle came to negotiate on behalf of we talked about Abu Talib. The uncle came to negotiate. What does he say? He says, uncle, if they give me the right, if they give me the sun on my right and the moon on my left, I'm not going to leave this da'wah. It's not about money. You understand? It's not about, this is not a money problem for me, right? Another time similar to this, when the companion said he took the clothes, the Battle of Badr. Does anyone know when he was lining up the people in the Battle of Badr? Yes. This guy had a bit of a stomach like me, right? And what was the Prophet ﷺ? He was setting up the line. So he was aligning them with his staff, and he pokes this guy, like really lightly. Like he's just like, and they're like, oh! like they do in soccer matches. Like, oh! And he falls, and the Prophet ﷺ, he's like, and he says, you hurt me, Rasulullah. And I want to take my revenge. And the companions are like, this is before Badr starts, right? And the companions are going to this guy, I'm like, are you out of your mind? And he says, no, you hurt me. And the Prophet ﷺ says, fine, take my staff. What did he do?
Take off your
hand. He hugged him and he kissed him. He said, what did you do this for? What did he say?
Well, we don't know if he will survive or not.
That's it. Okay. وما تسألهم عليه من أجر. Oh, إن هو إلا ذكر. Stop here, inshallah. ذكر للعالمين. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says this is only a ذكر للعالمين. What is dhikr? Reminder. What is the reminder? The Quran. The Quran is the reminder. How many words are used for the Quran in the Quran? There's 4 keywords. 4 keywords. What's the first one? Yes? Furqan before that. Give them to me in order. There's an order.
Quran.
Quran is number one. Okay, so there's no quick. The first one was that's Quran. So Quran is one. Okay, second. Okay, so Huda, yeah, but the other one is Kitab and Dhikr and Furqan. Those are the predominant occurrences. Quran means what? Something that is recited. Kitab means what? Kitab means the book. It means something that is written. So Quran means something that is recited. In fact, Quran, because it has the an at the end, means something that is recited continuously. Kitab means something that is written. So the Quran is recited and it's written. It's written in a book, kitab, right? Okay. And then we have this word dhikr, and then we have this word Furqan. So here is the word dhikr. Let's talk about Furqan first, before we get to dhikr. What does Furqan mean?
Criterion to judge.
Criterion. It divides between
right and wrong.
Right and wrong. Right and wrong, right? Okay. So what is dhikr?
Reminder.
Remembrance. Reminder. So it's a reminder to who? Who is it a reminder to? What is Quran a reminder to?
All the people.
Say that?
All the people.
MashaAllah, that's exactly the answer. It's all the people. Dhikr is a reminder to all the people. But how is it a reminder if they don't know? Because when I remind you of something, when I say I'm going to remind you of something, it means you already know it. I'm going to remind you of math you took in the second grade. It means it's math you took in the second grade. You know this math. I'm reminding you of it. So how does it apply to the Muslim and how does it apply to non-Muslim if this is for all the people?
Everybody took the oath.
Oh, okay, so everybody took an oath that we're going to worship Allah. Yeah, what are you going to say, brother?
In Alam Yarwa, when Adam was created, all of humanity was there.
That's right, and they took an oath that this is Allah we worship. That's correct. So basically what we're learning from this is every single human being, whether they call themselves a Muslim or a Jew or a Christian or a Hindu or whatever, is created with this inherent need and knowledge of who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. Every human being. Right? In fact, when we're making da'wah, that's the part of the soul of the person in front of you that you're actually appealing to. That's the part that you're talking to. You may not be talking to the brain, you're talking to this part that we know exists in the heart of other human beings. Because if it's a dhikr, it means he already knew. You know, humanity all throughout time has had a need to worship. All throughout time, from the Vikings, the ancient Egyptians, the Mesopotamians, they all had a need. They all had a need to worship. They all had a need to worship. You know the ayah before that. The ayah before that, when we talked about like you're not with them when you this happen. How fast did Islam change the region? How fast, we're talking about these ayat. How fast did Islam change this whole region to prove that this man was speaking the truth? Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. How fast did it take? 20 years. 20 years. Think about this. Like we don't talk about this now. In the scope of 20 years, the strongest world superpower was destroyed. This was the Persian Empire. And in the same 20 years, the Eastern Roman Empire was completely defeated. That's the second largest superpower. And so Alexandria, Jerusalem, Damascus, these were the capitals of some of these places. You hear about where Christianity was invented. Where was Christianity invented? It was invented in this thing called the Council of Nicaea. Where was this geographically? In Turkey. All of these places were Muslim lands in 20 years after the Prophet ﷺ. No other religion had this. 500 years later was when Constantinople, Istanbul became a Muslim city from Muhammad. Very, very rapid times. Right? 500 years after that, they were in Andalus. Like the fact that this man came with something special is undeniable, whether they're Muslim or. But the point that I'm trying to get to, let's get back to dhikr real quick, is that dhikr is a reminder of all human beings. And this new concept that people talk about called someone who's an atheist. Someone who's an atheist, right? I don't believe in anything, I'm an atheist, right? Like you hear people say that. Does anyone know when this started? It started about 1900 or 1850. Like literally this concept of atheism is about 150, 160 years old. So this is not something that people think is so cool that existed such a long time ago that I'm obviously talking about it like a bad thing. But this is a brand new invention of human beings, right? There's actually a guy invented it, right? That is not normal with the normal human beliefs. It's not. You know, I'll close with this one last story. One time, a long, long time ago, I was in Seattle and I was asked to come and give a talk at a church in downtown Seattle. And one of the people came to me and said, hey, can you do me a favor? I don't know where he was, Egypt or Jordan or something. I heard the Quran really beautifully recited. Can you play it for the congregation to hear it? Right? And Allah, I remember this, vividly. He hooked it up to, a church had an amazing sound system, like the best speakers that you can imagine and the best sound. And yeah, like this one, like this one, mashallah. And I played Surah Al-Rahman recited by Abdul Basit on YouTube. And the video had, I picked this video because it had the ayah in Arabic, the ayah in English, the ayah in Arabic, and it had the ocean and the rain. And wallahi, this moved me. Like these people are not Muslim. None of them were Muslim, right? They were just coming to Sunday church, basically. And they don't speak Arabic, okay? But it's as if there was a spell in the church, and I mean this in a really positive way. Like and I didn't know when to stop. Should I just keep going? Do you want to hear the story? The surah after that? Should we? But it was like, subhanAllah, it's the effect of the Quran on people that have a little bit of that, left in them. So anyway, so let's wrap up, inshallah, and continue next time. اللهم اغفر لنا وارحمنا وانت خير الراحمين. ربنا ظلمنا انفسنا وان لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين. اللهم نسألك رضاك والجنة ونعوذ بك من سخطك والنار. اللهم انك عفو كريم تحب العفو فاعف عنا. اللهم اشف مرضانا وارحم موتانا. اللهم اغفر لنا ولآبائنا وامهاتنا وارحمهما كما ربنا صغارا. اللهم انصر الاسلام واعز المسلمين. ربنا هب لنا من ازواجنا وذرياتنا قرة اعين واجعلنا للمتقين اماما. اللهم نسألك رضاك والجنة ونعوذ بك من سخطك والنار. اللهم انك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا. واخر دعوانا ان الحمد لله رب العالمين.